Hello, guys. Can you hear me? Okay. Oh, it's a lot of rain. That's so good. It's fantastic. So, good to see you guys. We're in our fourth panel, session today. Um, it's an honor to be here. Again, there's a lot of people here. There's a lot of people online, so thanks a lot to be here. It's a fantastic first section day. A lot of announcements, a lot of commitments, a lot of things. That's so good. So for this session, they enable deforestation conversion-free supply chains, lessons, incentives, and enables for charge. I'd like to invite Vegis Vic from NICFI, Senior Advisor, to open our session. So thanks a lot, guys. Have a nice session.
Thank you very much. You can hear me because, in spite of the rain, I think. Happy Forest Day, and it's a pleasure to be here with everyone to open this discussion on enabling conditions for deforestation and conversions-free supply chains. Because despite real progress, too many global food and feed supply chains still allow for clearing forests and other native ecosystems in their value chains. That means losing biodiversity, releasing carbon, and threatening the rights of and livelihoods of local and indigenous communities. Deforestation and conversion-free, or DCF as we often call it, supply chains are not just an environmental aspiration. They are becoming a business and regulatory necessity. And the question before us today is, what enabling conditions will make them the new normal? Now, we often say deforestation-free, but conversion goes beyond forests. It includes savannas, grasslands, and wetlands. And these ecosystems store vast carbon stocks, regulate water systems. They are essential for biodiversity. And if we stop deforestation but allow conversion elsewhere, we simply only move the problem. And that is why conversion-free matters. It closes the loophole and keeps the full ecological picture in view. WWF Brazil has developed minimum monitoring criteria for DCF products. It is a practical guide for companies sourcing soy, beef, corn, and cotton from Brazil. It defines what credible monitoring looks like: traceability from farm to exporter, cut-off dates after which no clearing of native vegetation is acceptable, near real-time monitoring using remote sensing and spatial data, and public reporting on sourcing and compliance. And it also involves supplier accountability and corrective action processes. These criteria create a common benchmark, a shared definition of what deforestation and conversion-free really means in practice. And they help turn broad sustainability commitments into measurable and verifiable progress. And they demonstrate that traceability and transparency are not compliance burdens. They are enablers of credible, low-risk, future-proof supply chains. Soy is one of the clearest test cases. In Brazil, it's a major driver of both deforestation and conversion, especially in the Cerrado biome. Yet we also have success stories. Norwegian companies, for instance, have shown that it's possible to source 100% of their soy for animal feed from supply chains verified as deforestation and conversion-free. They've done so for a long, long time. And this is a powerful market signal and proof that DCF sourcing is feasible, scalable, and economically viable when there's alignment between buyers, traders, and producers. At the same time, it highlights the enabling conditions needed to make it work: robust traceability systems, transparent monitoring, and dedicated support for farmers and cooperatives in Brazil who want to access these markets. So what can Norway and other consumer and market countries do to accelerate this transition? First, keep the demand signal strong. This is also the second and third point. Keep the demand signal strong through clear sourcing policies, public procurement criteria, and private sector commitments. Second, invest in capacity and data in producer countries. That means supporting monitoring infrastructure, satellite systems, farm-level mapping, and platforms that allow full traceability. Third, mobilize finance. Development fund funds and blended finance tools can de-risk investment in sustainable production and help producers, especially smaller ones, meet DCF standards. One example of this is the Catalytic Capital for Ag Transformation in Brazil, CCAT, that was launched last week with Anchor Capital from Moore Foundation and from Norway. CCAT will de-risk investments from the private sector into deforestation-free agriculture in Brazil. And the goals of this initiative are to facilitate increased finance from the private sector to small and medium farmers and to help enable cattle and soy supply chain companies to implement their commitments to deforestation and conversion-free soy sourcing. The fourth point is to align regulations and trade frameworks to give producers a single, consistent set of rules. And finally, support jurisdictional approaches, moving from individual farm or company action to coordinated regional efforts allows us to align incentives across local governments, producers and communities, scaling the DCF agenda across entire territories. And the enabling conditions we're discussing, traceability, transparency, finance and policy alignments, are not abstract concepts. They are the foundation that allows DCF supply chains to function credibly and at scale. We already have the building blocks as mentioned, and the challenge now is to move from pioneering examples to mainstream adoption, from isolated success stories to a new global standard for how we produce and trade commodities. So as we begin the conversation here, let's focus on the how. How do we remove the bottlenecks? How do we mobilize finance where it matters most? And how do we make sure that DCF supply chains become not a niche, but the norm? Thank you.
Thank you, Veris. Thank you, everyone. Boa tarde a todos. Meu nome é Melissa Brito. My name is Melissa Brito. I work for the Nature Conservancy, and I lead our work globally on halting deforestation from commodity supply chains. I really want to thank WWF for inviting me here into the Panda Hub. It's really an honor to be able to share our joint experiences. And also, I'm thrilled to have such an amazing panel with us today. Today we're going to explore 4 different cases that are really enablers for deforestation-free and conversion-free supply chains. 2 of them are fairly new on the scene, and 2 of them are rather long-standing and are already demonstrating deforestation-free supply chains. So let's go ahead and get started maybe with the newest one, and one that's making a lot of headlines here at COP30. I'm thrilled to introduce Andrew Deutz, an old colleague of mine from the Nature Conservancy who is now at WWF, their Global Director for Policy. And Andrew, come on up here. It's the youngest case that we're going to talk about that has a lot of ambition, a lot of, let's have a seat. A lot of ambition, a lot of promise that we have. And I'm really excited to hear from you, a true COP and policy expert, guru. What is the Tropical Forest Forever facility, and how is it poised to enable deforestation-free supply chains?
Sure, thank you. So I always joke that my natural habitat is a windowless UN conference room, so it's good to be back in my natural habitat. And just to date myself, this is COP30. I was at COP1 way back when. So I want to talk a little bit about how the TFFF is structured, how it's complementary to but different from REDD, how much money are we potentially talking about, what conditions are on the use of that money, and then how can governments best use the money to support the DCF agenda. So first, just to make the point, the TFFF is designed to pay for standing forests, measuring canopy cover, not carbon, not biodiversity, just standing forests, which makes it very different from REDD, right? REDD is meant to pay the countries that have a deforestation problem if they reduce deforestation, or pay for countries that are increasing forest cover. The TFFF is designed to support those countries that either haven't started deforesting, like Gabon, or those countries that have more or less solve their deforestation problem and come out the other side of the deforestation curve like Brazil. So in that case, it supports different payment processes for different rewards, different behavior, and is complementary to what REDD Plus and restoration funding can do. How much money are we talking about? In an ideal world, the TFFF, if fully capitalized, is meant to be paying out have the ability to pay about $4 billion per year. $4 per hectare for roughly 1 billion hectares of moist tropical forest out there. But that's assuming there is no deforestation, everyone qualifies, and they're not getting any discounts. So my WWF colleagues actually ran the numbers on this and looked at, if you applied the TFFF rules to the deforestation data available for 2024, how much would the payouts be? And the answer is about $2 billion in total. Brazil would be the biggest winner, receiving something like $520 million for the year. DRC would be around $250 million, and Indonesia around $210 million. That's an annual payment. To put those numbers in perspective, for Brazil, that is 2 times their annual biodiversity bilateral aid flow. For the DRC, it's about 1.5 times their annual aid flow, and for Indonesia, it's about on par with their annual aid flow. So we're looking at the TFFF, if fully capitalized, that can deliver as much or significantly more than bilateral aid flows for biodiversity to these countries. So that is materially significant to the budgets and the capacity of these governments to work in the forest sector. And I said, now, why work in the forest sector? Because that's part of the critical conditions for the use of the money. This is a pay-for-performance scheme, so there's a fair amount of discretion on how governments can use the money. But there are a few conditions. So first is first 20% goes to indigenous peoples and local communities in a separate, dedicated trust fund with a separate national committee of indigenous peoples and local communities making decisions over that. So the governments have discretion over the use of the remaining 80%. The money has to be spent in the forest sector, and the governments has to disclose a plan every year on how they're going to spend it. The catch is the accountability is primarily going to be coming from civil society to hold governments to account for how the money is spent. The other critical characteristics are that the money cannot be used to displace other financial flows from the government budget in the forest sector, so this has to be additive. And lastly, the government also has to account for land conversion rates in other biomes. So if you think about in Brazil, Brazil has to report on what's going on in the Caatinga or elsewhere to ensure that there isn't displacement. The red word for this was leakage. The TFFF doesn't use that, but it's the same concept, right? So if countries have too much land conversion in other biomes while protecting their forests, they could actually lose eligibility and access to the TFFF going forward. So that's the universe of constraints. The 20% to indigenous peoples, the remaining 80% by the government has to stay in the forest sector, can't displace existing financial flows in the sector. And then the biggest question is, how could governments use that to support the DCF agenda? Ved has just talked about all the different investments we need in the infrastructure for markets, for regulations, for capacity building. This money would be available for that. You're going to need a lot of work on monitoring capacity. There's a whole policy agenda out there around harmful subsidy reform, et cetera. This money could help buy down the transition costs for harmful subsidy reform in the agriculture sector. Probably the biggest bang for the buck for this revenue to support the DCF agenda would be for the governments to use this in a blended finance capacity. If you think about what could you do with 50 or 100 or $200 million a year in deployable discretionary capital that is concessional, right? So what could you do in partnership with a Banco do Brasil or a Rabobank or a Santander? What could you do to the incentives for farmers and other rural participants in the rural economy if you could subsidize the lending to them by a couple of percentage points with the discretionary capital and say, meet these standards for deforestation free, and you've got access to much cheaper capital that will make the conversion or make the conversion to sustainable practices economically feasible. So I think there's a lot of potential for blended financing mechanisms to leverage the existing private sector flows. Some of my WWF colleagues just did a report on the financial flows undermining forests in Brazil and Indonesia. And the biggest source of the problem is the regular banking sector making loans to foster conversion. What if we could change the financial incentives and the financial opportunities around those loans with $50, $100, $200 million of concessional capital in a blended finance structure from the governments? I think that could have a significant change in the financial incentives to finance the DCF agenda.
Great, fascinating. I did not know about those calculations. Those are some really big numbers that tropical forest countries can be able to tap into. Andrew, there's a common misperception, I think, that I've heard that is TFFF is going to be the silver bullet for halting deforestation and conversion. What do you think about that? Is it the magic wand that we've all been waiting for, or does it interact with other interventions?
So it's going to interact with I mean, the key point is it is one more tool in the toolbox. It is complementary to RED. We're talking a couple $100 million to Brazil, Indonesia, DRC. And I've described what governments can do with that. This is not enough money to change the economic incentives at the forest margin for the private operators by itself. In Brazil, though, this is enough money that it basically doubles or triples the budget of the National Forest Service. So there's a lot it can do to build capacity, establish regulatory regimes, and set up blended financing structures. But this does not fundamentally change the economics for the private sector but it can empower the government to do those things.
Great, thank you so much. Thanks, Andrew. We'll, yep, no, you can stay here. There's not going to be an interaction. Yeah, great. Thanks very much, Andrew, for sharing those insights. We're going to go to our next case now, and this is probably the world's most iconic, pioneering, and effective mechanism that we've ever seen in halting deforestation, not just reducing it. Hope I'm not giving a spoiler, but actually really eliminating it. It is my great pleasure to introduce Dr. Lisa Rausch. She's a renowned researcher from the University of Wisconsin. Don't be fooled, não se engana, gente. Essa mulher fala português fluente. Ela vem para o Brasil direto com certa frequência. Lisa, it would be great if we could just talk a little bit and you could guide us through the origins of the Amazon soy moratorium and the legacy that it is for us.
Sure. Great. Hi, everybody. It's great to be here with you. I'm so excited to be a part of this panel. Let's see. Oh. I got to find my slides. Hold on. Okay. I'm really excited to be here talking with all you guys about the soy moratorium. I don't know. Should I stand up? I don't know if it's easier. I'll be in front of the slides if I stand up. So what is the soy moratorium? The soy moratorium is a sector-wide agreement that was made by the Brazilian soy sector, the Brazilian Amazon soy sector in 2006. Why did they make, and the commitment was to no longer buy soy that came from any land that was deforested after the date of the agreement, recently deforested land. And why did they do this? They did this because there was a massive campaign that made a lot of noise and got a lot of attention, led by Greenpeace, that was able to link soy production to the deforestation in the Amazon, and then further link the soy that was being produced in these areas all the way over to Europe, where it was being used to feed chickens that were being made into chicken nuggets that Europeans were eating at McDonald's. So this got a lot of attention, and the timing was right, and McDonald's and the soy sector, their soy suppliers for their feed, came to the table with civil society and basically immediately agreed to implement this agreement. So the agreement was implemented, and they put in place, this is a really crucial point, that they put in place a universal monitoring system that is run by a group of civil society organizations, and we're able to get the participation of the Brazilian government, at least as supporters, and using Brazilian government data. And at the time of the implementation of the moratorium, the buyers of 90% of the soy that was originated from the Brazilian Amazon were participating. So this was essentially a universal signal to the productive sector that deforestation was no longer tolerated in the soy sector. So it may seem like this would have been a crisis for the soy sector, but in fact it wasn't. Soy was able to continue expanding under the moratorium in the Amazon. In fact, it expanded, it basically, I think, from like 2 to 6 or something so far under the moratorium. So essentially has been able to triple. And how was it able to do that? It was able to do that because there's a huge, what we call land bank of land of areas that were cleared, were cleared before 2006 because of the really high rates of deforestation that were present in the Brazilian Amazon up to that point. And soy has been able to expand onto those areas. Now, what were those areas being used for, if not for soy? And what might be being displaced? Pasture, right? Brazil's cattle sector is notoriously unproductive. So soy was able to expand by about 4 million hectares onto pasture lands that were cleared before 2006/2008. Then that pasture may have been displaced to the forest frontier, but in large part, we don't think it was. And why do we think that? Because we have research showing that deforestation actually was decreased across the Amazon under the first 10 years of the soy moratorium. So not only was the soy moratorium able to clean up supply chains, ensure that soy being produced from the Brazilian Amazon was deforestation free, but it had this broader effect of reducing the pressure on the forest frontier because it was such a strong signal and it was implemented so universally. What it did was it took soy producers out of soy production is like the highest paying, the highest value activity in the Amazon, land-based activity in the Amazon, right? It took these highest paying buyers of land out of the market for any land that was newly produced. And this ended up devaluing deforestation and was able to lead to a reduction just in the first, our paper on this only goes to the first 10 years of the moratorium, but it was able to lead to a reduction of 18,000 kilometers squared of avoided deforestation. The soy moratorium, beyond having this really amazing impact on forests, is also a really good deal for the soy sector because the soy moratorium works by the soy working group that monitors the soy moratorium is monitoring just the areas where soy is produced on a farm. Many times, soy is not produced on the entire farm, right? There could be other land uses, there's still forest, and so the soy moratorium is only monitoring the land where the soy is actually produced. So there have been very few violations of the soy moratorium. Nearly all of the soy that is produced in the Amazon is in fact compliant with the soy moratorium, but Brazil has another major policy that is supposed to be governing land use in these areas, which is its forest code. And the forest code is about how much land you can deforest across your whole property. And when we look at the numbers, we see that while there were almost no violations of the forest code, no deforestation being used for soy, about a quarter of the soy farms in the Amazon do have forest code violations. And these are not marginal farms. These are farms responsible for about a third of the soy that is produced in the Amazon. And so right now, some of you may know, some of you may not know, the soy moratorium has been in place for almost 20 years, is under major attack from various sides, and is at a high risk of falling. And so what happens if it falls? If it falls, there will need to be a ramped up increase of implementation of enforcement of the forest code on soy farms But the soy sector is going to find out, very quickly if this happens, that in fact many more people are going to be found in violation of the forest code and possibly unable to sell into the market than they are currently at risk right now due to just the soy moratorium limiting their expansion. The arguments that are being made, one of them is that the soy moratorium is not needed because the forest code is enough. And that the soy moratorium is limiting producers being able to expand onto land that the forest code would allow them to expand on. But the fact of the matter is that there are very few soy farms that have land that they could legally clear under the forest code, but like 90% of the deforestation across the Amazon is illegal. And so that's why it's so important that the soy moratorium has been able to send this signal to reduce the pressure outside of the immediate production areas of soy. Oh, I had one more slide showing the violations that I forgot to show, but there you go.
Great. Thanks so much, Lisa. So you just touched on how the soy moratorium is currently under a lot of pressure right now here in Brazil. And I think that will probably only increase in the next coming months before elections next year. But assuming, we're fairly confident that the soy traders who have progressively made stronger commitments to zero deforestation and zero conversion sourcing, most of them, almost all of them, are at least a cutoff date of 2025, the end of this year. So assuming that they actually implement that and are going to be true to their commitments starting next year, why do we still need the soy moratorium infrastructure?
Framework, yeah. That's a really good question. So the most important thing about the soy moratorium is that it involved the entire sector at the time it was implemented. But something that has happened since then is that there are a lot more companies active in the Amazon now than there were back in 2006. So in fact, instead of removing the soy moratorium, we actually need to expand the soy moratorium to be able to cover all of these different companies. The reason this is so important is because the sector-wide implementation of the agreement is what allowed for there to, first of all, not be incentives for leakage. When you have a lot of opportunities to sell non-compliant products outside of a DCF commitment, that can increase the incentives for people to decide they're going to totally operate outside of those commitments. And it can also create perverse incentives for the DCF companies that are competing with those companies because they're competing for product, right? These are if their competitors don't have the same commitments, then they can have perverse incentives to violate their own commitments. The sector-wide implementation was also so important because they used a universal monitoring system and universal definitions of what we're talking about. Deforestation-free land for soy sounds simple, but when you're looking at data and making purchasing decisions, it's actually, these kinds of things are very complicated. So having universal systems that are making everybody play by the same rules is really important for ensuring the integrity of those commitments, and then also for being able to send strong enough signals to the sector to create these additional effects that go beyond supply chains.
Great. Thanks so much. Yeah, it sounds really like the power of the demand signal was a force for raising the bar as opposed to what we've seen in so many cases where it's going to the least common denominator.
That's right. That's right.
Great. Thanks so much for sharing that inspiring story.
Yeah, okay. Should I?
Great. Our third case. Our third case is o nosso terceiro caso is the Programa Estadual da Amazônia Agora, programa estadual do Estado do Pará. Meu grande prazer chamar a Indara Romier, que é do SEMAS, do Secretaria de Meio Ambiente e Sustentabilidade aqui do Estado do Pará, para apresentar um pouco sobre o caso da Amazon Now, como é chamado em inglês, the Amazon Now program run by the Secretary of the Environment and Sustainability here in the state of Pará. Indara, prazer.
Hi everyone. Um, it's okay if I speak Portuguese, or do you prefer I speak English? Okay, I'll try in English. Well, first, it's a great pleasure to have you all here and know what Amazon is. Some of you maybe are not used to be here. So I believe now you can see what about our challenge here to control the impacts of climate change, but also see how wonderful is our culture, our forest, our people, Amazon. So I'm really happy to receive you all here. Let's see. In the state of Pará, in 2009, the state has structured deforestation control through land use planning, sustainable production, and environmental enforcement, significantly reducing deforestation rates and boosting CAR, PRA, and municipal initiatives. However, it lacked robust financing, adequate monitoring, climate integration, and continuous governance, gaps that paved the way for a more modern policy, the PEAA, the Amazon Now State Plan. With a not so good result in 2019, we had the increase in deforestation, and it accelerated the creation of the Amazônia Agora State Plan, which was launched at COP25 and institutionalized in 2022. The PEAA emerged as a policy for combating deforestation and promoting a low-carbon transition, combining enforcement, cultural change, and socioeconomic transformation aligned with the Paris Agreement and DCs. After this first cycle, the plan's goals were updated. The reduction was revised from 37% to 43%, and the secondary vegetation target expanded from 5.6 to 7.4 million hectares. That's our new challenge. In 2024, the law 10,715 consolidated the PEAA 2, version 2, which was organized into 3 structural components: low emissions development, enforcement, licensing, and monitoring, and landing, territorial, and environmental governance, supported by cross-cutting pillars and of financing, participation, innovation, and safeguards. Results through 2025 demonstrate consistent progress. We reduced more than 16% deforestation from principally 2021. We had a good result in deforestation. Low emissions development, launch of the bioeconomy plan, expansion of the sustainable livestock program, implementation of sustainable territories, support more than 5,000 bioeconomy business, benefit over 40,000 people, enforcement and monitoring, state deforestation combat task force, commercial requalification program, Curupira and Amazônia Viva operations, fire brigades, green seal, and coastal zoneamento ecological economical. So, State of Pará has launched a pioneering model of restoration concessions. We create a new model of restoration concessions, which is a protected area, believing that we can enforce this new market that links environmental recovery and regional development. So the Plano Estadual Amazônia Agora becomes possible. All of those initiatives so that we can work harder and reduce deforestation and also increase the recover to our forest. And we have been a lot of great results with the reduce this deforestation, as I said, recover the forest, and but all this work, all this way to combine our policy strategies, we need to pay attention. We need to take care of people who is living in the forest and depends of those way to live. So we can't just say, hey, stop doing what we're doing. We need to give more ways. We need to give them structure to do this. So we have still a big challenge about financing. So, but I believe PAAA is being very, very well. We already has good results, and now we, with COP30 here and all of those meetings and more relationships being done here, we believe we can go unto our final point.
Thanks so much, Indara. Yeah, it's just congratulations on being able to institutionalize really the PEAA as a law last year. That gives it such staying power. And also congratulations. You know, I looked at the data from Mapiomas, and from 2022 to 2020, from 2021 to 2024, Pará had a 68% decrease in deforestation. That's so important and so powerful. And the government led most of those initiatives under this Plano Estadual, right? You mentioned a few of the sort of initiatives that fall under this umbrella of the Plano Estadual. But what are you most excited about, say, in the next 5 years? Because this plan is a net zero by 2030 plan for the state. What are you most excited about, or what initiatives do you feel are most promising over the next 5 years to help Pará get that last little bit of deforestation, the last 150,000 hectares a year out? Yeah.
Okay, I can say about some programs that I am working hard now and straight with our team, because our secretary is very big. We need to work different ways to reduce deforestation, but I can give some examples. As I said, Pará has launched a pioneering model of restoration concessions and created a new market that links environmental recovery with regional development. This first recovery unit already contracted shows the scale of this opportunity. The concessionary will restore 10,000 hectares of native vegetation and is expected to generate over 4,000 jobs through the contract period, that's 40 years. This model organizes demand, attracts private investments, incorporates technology, and professionalizes the restoration economy across the territory. It marks a beginning of a continuous economic activity based on recovering degraded areas, shifting restoration from isolated projects to a real investable sector. To unlock its full potential, the state must scale up this model, expand the number of units, create a new predictable pipeline of areas, and offer long-term investment horizons. Scale is essential to consolidate a robust restoration value chain in Pará. Structured nurseries, planning logistics, trained local workforce, permanent technical assistance, forest innovation, and opportunities for communities and small producers. And also I can say about Programa Pecuária Sustentável do Pará, which has progress in livestock monitoring and Green Seal. We have the Green Seal, a system that tracks the social environment compliance of the entire cattle supply chain, identify risks, blockages, and opportunities for regularization for both producers and slaughterhouse. The Green Seal analyzes animal movements in real time, cross-checking car data, embargoes, deforestation alerts, and protected areas, is friendly production control and providing greater legal security to the market. And complementing this system, the state implemented the TER-VS, the first continuous monitoring tool for regenerating secondary vegetation, essential for tracking natural regeneration dynamics. The TER-VS issues alerts when there is deforestation of secondary vegetation, protecting growing forest areas that are key for meeting climate targets and increasing carbon stocks across territory. So together, Green Seal and the TER-VS form a unique model in Brazil that integrates livestock productions, environment governance, and intelligent landscape monitoring, reinforcing Pará commitment to traceability, transparency, and consistent deforestation reduction.
Thank you so much, Indara. It was really great to hear that we had a private sector initiative and now a public sector initiative, a jurisdictional approach, and to think about how both of those are going to put Brazil in a better position to access TFFF funding in the future. So thank you so much.
Thank you very much. I'm sorry for the English. I promise I'll be better the next time.
Okay, at this point, we're going to exit mentally from the Amazon. We're going to travel across the world to another very important tropical forest for climate change. I'm so pleased to have here Dewey, who is the WWF Indonesia's Chief Conservation Officer. Dewey, I'm really excited to hear about the technologies. You're going to do it with it? The technologies that you see scaling. We've heard about traceability, cattle traceability in Pará, and now we have a case of traceability in the palm oil sector of Indonesia. So, Dewey, yeah.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Melissa. Good afternoon, everyone. I would like to share with you about the apps that we developed in Indonesia to actually supporting the DCF implementation. Because with this system is talking about end-to-end, from the plantation into the mills. If you see the green bar there, the sustainable production, that's what we are actually recording. So users can record and also can monitor and verify the productions and also the transactions of supply chains. So this is actually forming the foundation for DCF implementation. Yeah. So if we see that WWF Indonesia is actually doing the extension to the farmers to fill in the system and also to actually registering the geocoding for the area. And also support the millers or growers to see how their supplier works. I will see this. This system is actually called Harmonies, stands for Hasil Murni and Lestari, which is refers to pure and sustainable product in Indonesia. So Harmony is pure and sustainable. So this actually aligns with the global standardization, RSPO, principles and criteria. ISPO is Indonesian Sustainable Palm Oil. It's also aligned with that. And principles and criteria of ISPO and EUDR. If EUDR actually requesting above 4 hectares to be geocoded, Harmony already started from below that. And also, Harmony or the 80% aligned with major global traceability, like already mentioned before. And we could see here the registration. We start with the by address and by name. So this is very important and very sensitive data for the farmers in Indonesia. So a directory is completing the name and address and phone number, and also about the location of the green, the plantation, and we geocoded the area, and it's registered there, and user can actually see all the geocoded, and also details of the plantations, who owns that, and then how they're actually doing the polygon and location. This is the sample is in West Kalimantan, and also we could actually loading and unloading the fresh fruit bunch into the data as well. But again, the farmers need to be supervised and doing the extension from WF Indonesia. And again, the transaction. Harmony can support the information of the transaction, who the farmers sell to, and then how they're actually being conducted. Name of plantation, name of the collecting points, where they collect the FFB, and then also transaction partner, who buys the products, and amount of the transaction. And also could actually show the monthly data transaction amount, notification, and transaction history. So this is very complete information of the transactions for the farmers and also the buyers. And then we have actually provided a dashboard, both for the farmers and also for the buyers. They could actually trace it, where the location and where the farmers and who the group farmers are, and then whether that's coming from the forested area or not. So it's really clear where the plantations come from. And also the supplier information. If the supplier is actually registered into Harmony, they could actually trace using the dashboard user and mills and companies cooperatives. The difficulty is, or not difficulty, the challenge is the companies is reluctant to do the disclosure of the data. So it is still a challenge for Harmony to make all the buyers and growers actually adopt this system. And then for map of sourcing area, we could actually identify in detail where the location, and then also the amount of the harvest and all the seller and buyers names. So this is full of information in the system. So this is the supply chain actors. We could actually relate all the supply chains into the buyers, who's the actor are and who's the buyer are. This could actually supporting the supply chains information. Harmony already registered 305,000 farmers, but only around 10 or 10% are actually being registered international register. There are different national register and then the Harmony. So we support the farmers to actually being able to register in the national platform. And the national platform has the dashboard being supported by Harmony's data. And this is the information of smallholders working areas in Indonesia. They are not actually all of them already been registered in Harmony. They are almost around 116,000 smallholders, but only register around 3,500. So it's still a lot of work to do, and to support the Harmony really works. And this is the implementation. The lesson learned. Even though the system already adopted, we still need extended engagement, because otherwise the farmers can forget to actually input the data again to the system. Yeah, and then also simplified and contextual tools matter. The harmonies need to remain intuitive and also relevant to smallholders' daily operations, and also the incentive reinforced before real change. Direct economy benefits play a key role into this system because this encouraging continuous engagement with sustainability platforms. Otherwise, they are not going to actually continue the membership. And then collaboration is critical. So I think this is all that I'm going to.
Thank you so much, Dewey. What I really love about this initiative is that its focus is on smallholders, and there are millions of them in Indonesia. So smallholder inclusion in the supply chain it's a market imperative and a social imperative. So I'm curious, how is the Indonesian government involved, or is the Indonesian government involved in this, either at a national level or at a provincial level, or is it purely a markets approach?
Well, yes, government authority in Indonesia actually seen the smallholders digitalization as the economic necessity and also the responsibility of social. So government authority involvements, I could say there are two levels. It's from national levels, from ministry levels. I have a note here whose ministry is Ministry of Agriculture. They're actually doing the smallholder data registration, the same like Harmony. So we need to actually combine the Harmony data, as I said already, that the ministry have the dashboard, and then we actually provided the data for the dashboard in the ministry. And then also the farmer training, they also do that. And ISPO is Indonesian Sustainable Palm Oil Implementation Support. The Ministry of Agriculture also do that. And then the second is coordinating Ministry of Economic Affairs. They actually lead the policy negotiation related to international regulation like UDR. So we're actually working with them as well to harmonize every single data that they need for IUDR compliance. And then also encourage the formation of industrial-wide solutions, partnership, and also national farmer works. And then the next is Ministry of Cooperative and Small Medium Enterprise. The Ministry of Cooperative is facilitated the cooperative that formalization and also professionalization. They're supporting the cooperative that's set up by the farmers and also putting a small or little bit capital for them to be able to work. And also they provide training and also fundings programs, as I just mentioned. And Ministry of Forestry, they also support for legality verification and land use compliance. And the second is for provincial and district government. They are really important to actually working together with all the farmers to do the geocoding, technical verifications of the land that being registered, both to Harmony and also to the Ministry of Agriculture.
That's great that something that was born in civil society is now seeing uptake and engagement through both the private sector and the public sector as well. What a unifying initiative. Thank you, everyone. Those are our 4 cases. I think we have some closing words also from Jean Times, who is the markets director for WWF Brazil.
Thank you. So we have seen a lot of very inspiring presentations here. First, we have the proof of concept that it is feasible to stop deforestation and conversion from supply chains in very large scale. Through this Amazon soy moratorium has proven that with all its limitations. It was like 16 years ago, and it's still on, actually. And it needs to be reinforced and maybe updated and modernized. So it is possible. Now, we also have seen very practical new tools being developed to enable that to happen, like Harmony system, and also which is like really creating a tool for engaging a very complex supply chain with thousands and hundreds of thousands of smallholders. And we've seen similar or other approaches with that multiplicity of players happening for cocoa in Ghana, for cocoa in Ecuador and Peru, and coffee. And so we see that these efforts are sprouting, they are growing independently everywhere. And then we see something also amazing. It's the new role of governments. And we've seen, subnational and national governments taking over a role that is beyond policies, creating tools that level the playing fields among big, medium, and small producers, and enabling them to become a very safe source for commodity worldwide. So we've seen, like, the framework that was presented today from the state of Pará is the base, is the structuring base for an amazing traceability system, for individual traceability system for cattle that will universalize a totally transparent supply chain in the state of Pará, which is one of the biggest producers of cattle in the world. And so another proof of concept that is here emerging. And finally, we've seen also a global system that is trying to put finance straight to the hands of the forest country, that is kind of leveling also that unfair situation of having a lot of pressure to protect forest while not having fair recognition for it and support for it. That all said, we know that stopping deforestation and conversion is critical to achieve the 1.5 objective. And that if we don't reach that objective, we'll have a massive issue. Like, what is at stake is our economy, our civilization is at stake at this moment. And basically, the good news is we have everything in our hands for that to happen now and very quickly. So that's maybe the message I would like to leave from all what we received here. There is no excuse for not doing it, and we have to do it immediately. So thank you very much. One thing, I would like you not to leave right now, because we have another small disclaimer to make. China is developing a new tool for finance systems that allows you to connect soft commodity supply chain with sustainable finance. And I would like to invite just Xin to present very quickly that. This is totally new. Thank you very much, Xin.
Thank you, Jean, and thank you very much for this session to share the floor, and also you, dear guests, to share your time for some additional introduction to this tool that we would like to introduce a bit. I'm sorry if there's a slides. And WWF China right now is developing a finance tool to linking the sustainable finance products to the DCF criteria, especially when the minimum criteria from Brazil and also has been launched, and for the Indonesian palm oil ready to be launched. So we see that there's a lot of the challenges here actually for the sustainable finance linked not only to the producers, as people have been discussing about, but also for the supply chain players here, for them to get the green finance incentives as a way that they can move on with the supply chain plays. So that's why we launched this, we developed this tool actually to help as the reference to the financial institutions, especially the banks, to when they design their sustainable finance tools, such as sustainable linked loans, sustainable linked bonds that we have been hearing more and more these days, and to link to the supply chain kind of the players, but also some other innovative ways that can be employed for the finance institutions to link to the minimum criteria. We also would like to make this tool actually to be a very inclusive tool, because the minimum criteria we are right now developing is also very inclusive, not only limited to one certification or one protocol, but considering all the possible technical protocols to be included as far as it meets this deforestation conversion-free criteria. So that also helps actually to enlarge the possibilities and the potentials for both the banks to look to give more support to their clients, and also to the supply chain players to get more possible support from the kind of the green finance perspective. So Okay, so maybe the slides won't come yet. So maybe by taking the time, I will just stop here. And I would like to also invite you, if you have time, to stay in our next session on the South-South dialogue, so that I can also share kind of the QR code, the link, at least for your review of the tool itself. Thank you very much.